me turn a little bit this way. Not much use in looking out at the bright lights. So, hi, good afternoon. We got the vaunted post-lunch nap slot, but I hope we can keep this entertaining enough to keep everyone awake. One thing I wanted to do just as we open and talk about this, the title of the panel is The Next Network Professional. Last week, the community lost someone who was incredibly passionate about what we're about to talk about, which is themed around diversity and inclusion in the industry. And so, it's with sadness that Bryn Fowler passed away. She was passionate in the Women's Technical Forum organization, as well as pretty involved here in NANOG. So, just a moment for her. Thank you. So, I'm going to throw around a couple terms a lot in this panel. And I want to make sure, because many of us are either technologists or used to be technologists or hope to be technologists or adjacent to technologists. And so we don't talk about these things a lot. And so there are two words, diversity and inclusion. And some people lump those together, like I just did, right? We talk about diversity and inclusion almost all the time together. They're two very different things. And at Netflix, we actually have a VP of inclusion named Vernee Myers, who's been in that industry for a very long time. She's got a great book. I highly recommend you read it. But the easiest way to describe the difference between the two is that diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance at the party. So it's a lighthearted way to think about it, but try to frame when we talk about that in those bars. So with that, what I want to do is introduce our panelists, and we'll just start from the end of the stage and come this way. Edward, can you tell us who you are, where do you work, and how did you get here? And when I say here, I don't mean how did you get to NANOG, I don't mean how did you fly here, I don't mean how did you get this job in particular, but why are you here in your career?
So I'm Edward McNair. I'm the executive director of NANOG. I currently live in Portland, Oregon, but in the question of how I got where I am, I think that it would say that it was curiosity that drove me. I was a lit major in school. I'm a little on the older side, and I remember the day that it happened. I was a men's suit manager for Nordstrom's, and I was walking out of the store down the street, and I saw a sign that said, PC clones, 95% compatible. And then I suddenly realized this was not a fad, that this was going to be real, it was going to be everywhere. And that's when I decided to make a shift in moving toward technology. I was talking to one of my children once, and I said, we were in an auto mechanic shop and getting our car serviced, and they had all these stations with PCs sitting around them. And I said, we never imagined this when I was your age, that you would walk in and see computer stations all around. So that was the moment.
Was there a person or a group of people who you can point to that said, this person made your career possible?
Yeah, there was a gentleman that I used to work with by the name of Bill May, and it was when I first got in my career starting to work into the computer industry. And he was one of the greatest bosses I ever had. He just was encouraging. He gave me the room to fall and falter and make mistakes, and was always afterwards, okay, so what did we learn? And it was just inspired me to always work harder and do better.
Thank you. Najim?
Great. So I'm Najim Ahmad. I'm part of the network team at Facebook, so support all the networking efforts and teams that build a network for Facebook properties. My journey's been interesting, where I started out as a network person, and I'm still a network person, and I think I'm going to end at a network person. Early days in college, I started looking at routing, and routing was relatively new at that time, and I just got addicted to sort of the distributed nature of how routing worked. And since then, I've been really intrigued by that, and I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in places where a lot of the routing technologies were developed, early days of UNet and places like that. That was really sort of interesting. Actually, somebody who just walked in and gave me a big, that coming in is the job I took when he left UNet. So, and that was to be the peering coordinator for for UNet or 701, and that's sort of how I got into the network industry, and I've just been addicted since then. Has evolved a ton, and just trying to play a small part in the evolution of where the network industry is and where the network is going.
And is there a person or a group of people that you can?
I think it's a group of people. I've really had really good luck in landing in places where it's been fun to actually go experiment and try different things. My first thing out of college was writing frame relay code, and somebody handed me a frame relay and an ISPEC and said, "Hey, go, have fun." And didn't know what I was doing, and there was a lot of help, and it was just kind of learning experience. It was okay to fail. And then the UNet experience was similar, that we were essentially inventing things as we went along. We were talking at lunch earlier. I remember when MPLS was being talked about, and MPLS didn't exist, it was developed in the hallways. And it was just really the fun conversations to have, to take a problem and how do you solve it. And I've just been lucky enough to be around those situations where a lot of passionate people were trying to solve hard problems.
Yep.
And that's been the key for me on how my career has grown.
Thank you. Jack?
I'm Jack Waters. I help lead a company called Zayo, if you couldn't guess. Gosh, how did I get here? I got here in 1985, and a bit of a defining moment. I know for many of you that's unheard of, but I was an intern at a lab, a government lab, and I think a junior in college. I was a Unix systems administrator on a VAX 11785, if you remember what that was. And the thing that dawned on me was that I could send an email to the person sitting next to me just as easily as I could send an email to somebody at UCL in London. And that was a very defining moment. If you think back then, that was right after AT&T was broken up 2 years later, modified final judgment. The notion of long distance and local calling was still like in everyone's mind. If you were a kid at that time, you worried about making a long distance call on your parents' phone. And to be able to have this boundaryless thing sitting in front of me was fascinating, and I got hooked. And I see Bill Norton and Sean Kennedy and a few other folks that have been around as long as I have, and this conference wasn't called NANOG. This was called the NSFNet Regional Techs Meeting, and in '94 we were sitting around at the US West Advanced Technology Center and decided, well, that's not very inclusive anymore. We wanted to have it much broader than the NSFNet Regional Techs, and so we named it NANOG, with Mark Knopper and a few other, Tom Easterday and a few other folks in the room. So Elise Garrick. That's kind of how I got here, and I've been a part of a lot of fun things along the way, building. I think I'm personally responsible for more traffic jams in the United States than any other human, because I've built a ton of network, and it's been a really special thing, and I love coming here and seeing so many new people being involved. The defining person for me, I'd say the two sets. The first is the group of network engineers in the late '80s. That really was less than 50 people. It really was, the very beginning of all this. And those folks I still interact with. Nasser Alawar, who's on the Facebook team, he and I always joke about him sending, he had just come into the country and sending broken English emails to everybody for maintenances. The second person is Vint Cerf. I was lucky enough to work for Vint for a number of years, and really very special person, great person.
Levi?
So my name is Levi Perigo. I'm full-time faculty at the University of Colorado. I do research and teach classes in network engineering. And kind of for this group, the classes that I teach a network automation, a software-defined networking class, and a SDN virtualization and orchestration class. And so one of the things, kind of the topic, the next network professional, one of the things kind of indicating where we're headed is we were in the master's program called ITP, Interdisciplinary Telecom Program, and now all of our network engineering has shifted to computer science. And so that's kind of an indication of where we're going. How I got here, so my kind of road to academia is not the traditional one at all. I was a senior network engineer and managing a technical support team at Adtran. And from there, I decided, I was a traditional network engineer, router jockey, kind of like a lot of people in here. But one of my focuses is I moved to academia kind of for two main reasons. One is just the continued learning, right? In academia, you're forced to learn new technologies. And not only do you have to learn these technologies, I got to learn them. I have to create a lab on them that are going to be taught to students that this is going to be their full-time job. So you have to learn brand new technologies really in depth. So I like that aspect of learning brand new technologies and working really hard on complex problems. So, at Adtran, when I was a network engineer, I was solving current problems. One of the things I like in academia is we're trying to solve problems that may not exist yet. So I really like this idea of working hard and trying to work on complex problems and see where the future of networking may go. And the other reason I'm kind of where I am today is, as cliched as it may be, is the students, right? We really get to make an impact on what they do and what they choose for their career. And, unlike a lot of the people up here, they may get 1 or 2 first-round draft picks, when they hire. I get 30 or 40 every year that I get to continue to work with. And so I really like, working with the students and working on the problems and hopefully making a difference.
Thank you. Anna?
Hi, everyone. So I run product and engineering at Packet Fabric, and we are a next-generation fully automated network service provider. And a lot like Najum and Jack and Levi, I've been working in the network field for quite a long time. I think I got my first taste when I was a kid on my dad's friend's computer, just using Write to talk to my dad, who was back at home when I was away up in the mountains, just using Write on the Unix command line to talk to him, and it blew my mind that it was possible to actually talk to somebody over a phone line, especially one that made a bunch of weird screechy noises. And then when I was 14, someone was dumb enough to entrust me with running and managing a frame relay network at a bank. So I got into that, and then eventually I fell more into the software side of things. Learned a lot about software engineering, and then the two sort of met, and that's what I've been doing since, is a lot of automation on top of networks. And I'm not sure that I could point to a particular person, but I can certainly point to a lot of people along the way who have helped me in my career. It was probably those, the IT manager at the bank that first started, that first decided to hire me. And then there was an incredibly great group of executives that I worked with at Terramark, who many of them were my mentors. The CTO there, the CEO, were just great people, and they were really inspiring and encouraged me on my career path.
Thank you. And I'm Dave Temkin. I've been at Netflix minus a short period where I left. When I first started as just a network engineering manager, I've been at Netflix for about 11 years now, and I've seen that company grow from just slinging DVDs to now 150 million plus streaming customers. And it's been a wild ride for sure. Before that, I'd been in the .com space for a little while, and before that I was in the financial space. But when I first started my career, I was actually 15 and a half. I say this because I couldn't drive to this job for the first 6 months. I had to go with a friend who got me the job, and the job was at a co-op position while I was still in high school at Bristol Myers Squibb, the pharmaceutical company. And he saw something in me. He was a year and a half older than me, and we had met on the local BBS scene in the Philadelphia area. And he convinced his boss to bring me in for an internship and then for a co-op. And his boss was this guy named Chris Baldwin, who, I don't know why he put up with my shit, but he did. And they first put me in help desk, and those of you who know me can imagine how well that went. And so then they're like, maybe, you seem like you've got potential here, so let's find something else. This network stuff, you don't really have to talk to people. So they moved me to network, and I just took to it, like just completely overnight. And Chris stuck with me. Chris brought me back for a co-op every year while I was still in high school, and then gave me a job straight out of high school. And so I can definitively point to Chris and the person who introduced us as why I'm here today. So I wanted to also, I want to recognize something. So Anna was nice enough. When did I ping you? Friday?
Friday.
Pinged her Friday afternoon and said, hey, one of our panelists dropped out. Gina Haspler was supposed to be on the panel with us today, but her mom passed away last week, unfortunately. And so she was unable to be here this week. And I said, hey, I'd really like to get a woman's perspective on this panel. And what happened was I pinged Jack, I pinged Najim. I said, who else can we ask? Because one thing that was really important to me was that I found someone who had leadership experience, right? Who had fostered and grown teams. And I pinged Anna and I was like, what do you think about this? And she's like, well, I'll do it. I was like, okay, thanks. Anna, why was it so hard for me to find a woman to replace Gina?
Because there are not, look in the room. Women are the minority here, and as you move up the food chain even further into management and then executive management positions, there becomes fewer and fewer women in those positions. So I would have given Dave another suggestion had I had one.
Fair enough. People like to throw around the term pipeline problem. And I want to get everyone's, or those who want to contribute to it, your thoughts around that. And I'm going to start again with Anna, because you and I specifically talked about that as a problem of problems.
Yes.
And why is that term so problematic?
So the biggest problem with pipeline, right, is you can't hire what isn't there. And I work with hiring across our network engineering teams, data center engineering, infrastructure, software, system reliability and engineering, network reliability engineering, right? There's a big pile of resumes we have for a lot of open positions. And when you look at the percentage of women in there, it's around 10% maybe. It's usually a single digit percentile, right? And so if you want to achieve any sort of mass in hiring, in hiring women, you just can't do it. You can't hire the people that aren't there. And everything that I've read about it indicates that the pipeline problems happen at like several different stages. They happen in middle school, high school, and college. And sort of at every stage, you get more and more women that are filtered out of either network engineering or software engineering because they don't think it's a woman's career or just don't believe that it's right for them instead of being encouraged to keep on going. So when you're dealing with all these different levels of filtering and narrowing down more and more, so you have a very small pool of people to start with, and then once you actually get into employment, there's things like a lot of women just don't get the mentorship that they need. I was fortunate enough to have that. And then there's also things like parental leave policies that influence women staying in the pipeline, if you want to call it. So then by the time that you get to executive management, you're left only with a very, very few.
Levi, what trends are you seeing?
Yeah, so I think we're a little on the upside of this. So in our graduate program in network engineering, we're 40% women.
Wow.
And of the 5 students we have here today, 3 of them are women. So, but I also agree, if the students aren't there, you can't select them. And we do not have a lot applying for a master's program. But the ones that we do have applying are always outstanding. So I definitely think in kind of grad school, we're definitely seeing this trend shift, at least in the engineering school at CU Boulder. So hopefully this will continue for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you know if that's just in CU Boulder, or is it across academia that we're seeing like?
So I don't know. I know that, one of our kind of focuses in the engineering school is, diversity, both with gender and everything. So yeah, I'm happy to say our program is definitely 40%. I can't speak for the others.
Yeah, I kind of agree that it feels a little bit on the upswing. If we look at our company in Colorado, we're about 45% female, 55% male, obviously. And I think it's required us to be very intentional, measuring, making sure that we're taking as many steps as we can to be more intentional. And I've certainly seen in the past. But I do agree that the pipeline is awfully thin at times, and it's tough. That's not, 45% is across the whole company, so it's not the technical.
Yeah,
rank.
I was gonna ask
Yeah.
not to pick on you, but what is it in the engineering?
I was in an offsite, and Reed, the CEO of our company, called me out in front of all of our VPs of the company, about 80 of them, and said, Dave Temkin, you have the best ratio of women to men in all of product, and product encompasses technology and Netflix. How did you do it? And I was like, I'm gonna take a pass on answering this question. Let's talk about this offline. And he's like, whoa. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Let's just talk about this offline. So we go offline, and I'm like, if I look at my teams, the women on my teams are, provisioners or doing logistics or doing business operations. They're not on the technical side. There's a few, but it's not even remotely the same ratio. And I said, I feel called out here to some extent. You wanted it to be positive, but it actually turned into a negative. So I'm in the same exact space.
So I want to jump in. Few things that, like what Jack was saying, one, be intentional about driving the change. Remember I started the conversation when I'm a network person, I always been one, always be one. No, change it. That's one of the things that I'm starting to become more passionate about. If you think about networks, they're large-scale distributed systems. There are at least double the number of women in software engineering distributed system problem space than in network itself. Roughly 15% is on network and 30% is what software engineering. Can we bring network up to 30%? That will be a big gain. So one of the things that I think we've been trying to drive is not be very specifically pigeonholed, boxed into you're a network person. You're solving large-scale distributed system problems using software. Let's do that. And what you're doing is you're enhancing the scope of people that are actually interested in those type of problems, and you bring those into the fold. Having engineers, traditional network software engineers and software engineers working together, actually solving problems, that has helped a lot in those cases. But then also working on building the pipeline, like one of the things we've done with Levi and his university is build a rotational engineering program where we hire fresh graduates, not more than maybe 2 years of experience. And our numbers are better, Levi, 60% women on that program. And we've already graduated 16 engineers out of that program. And we're continuing to add more headcount to it, and it's actually growing fairly well. The other thing that we started a program that's not directly network engineering, but feeding to our technical program management side is what we call return to work. A lot of people, especially women, take some time off during paternity, having kids or whatever. It's really hard to come back into a tech industry 3 years later. Technology has moved on, you're not in the same phase. So we started this program where we would hire people for a year, sort of let's try this out, help them through mentorship, through training programs, through projects and things like that. And at the end of the year, we would make a decision on, yes, this person will stay or not, and offer a full-time position. Guess what? The people actually staying is much, much higher. So we started with 16 people, 14 got full-time offers, 13 are women.
That is awesome.
What is your staff structuring that made that happen? I mean, it's saying it's deliberate intent. What is the staffing, the structure that makes this possible?
So I'll be transparent and say one of the advantages of Facebook is that we don't need a lot of staffing structure, approval processes, and things like that. We get to go create programs that we can actually fund ourselves. Like the rotational engineering program that we started with Levi and his team was essentially, there are a couple of people that work out of our Boulder office. They went to see U Boulder and they were like, hey, we have contact, we want to go start this program. And we get this started. Now I have a manager that manages the rotational program engineering team, and essentially all team support by mentoring. And by taking them on 3-month rotation, you're working on projects. So the trouble that I see a lot of times is in a lot of companies is organizational, where we need a lot of approval, a lot of processes, a lot of things around it. It doesn't take that stuff. It really takes 2 or 3 passionate people who are passionate about solving this problem or actually working on it, and you start going. And when you actually see the success, you have more people jumping in. That's been my experience.
Yeah, and I just want to jump on, because I couldn't possibly agree with more with what Najim is saying. As far as like, for whatever reason, good or bad, the word network seems to be repellent to a lot of women. And looking at it as distributed systems, it's actually how we found some of our best people, is looking for people with a background in managing like large-scale power systems or just any other large-scale systems, because it's the same thing. It's any large system that has real-world interaction. And when we spoke earlier, I love that concept, and I think we're actually going to start using that a little bit more in our job postings. And also to structuring, the question of structuring teams. How we structure our teams at Packet Fabric is we have this concept of all of software, SRE and NRE. NRE is what we call network reliability engineering. All homeroom together, meaning that they're all part of the same core group, and we all agree on certain tools and certain sets of rules of engagement, whatever. But then for the most part, the software engineers or the reliability engineers live, breathe, eat, work, sleep with the teams that they're solving problems for. And those problems range a lot more. It's not just network, right? We actually have quite a few. I mean, sales, it requires a lot of automation. And it has some really difficult problems to solve. And having the software, people live and eat with those teams allows them to gain really deep knowledge about those problems and dive into that. And again, it removes a lot of this whole central processes, whatever. It allows for a lot more free-form engagement. And I don't know, I think it works for creating much more inclusive and what's the word for like binding together teams?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about inclusivity and also diversity in general, when you think about both of them, when you do try to squish them together, what you're really looking for is diversity of thought. And right, whether it's a woman or a man, what their race is, what their sexual orientation is, the benefit to your business is the diverse background, because they're bringing a different way of thinking about things. And to your point, right, that builds a better team.
Yeah, it really does, especially when you have a big problem set and a diverse problem set. Like you don't want everyone that's going to look at solving the problems the same way. Otherwise, you could end up with a lot of really bad solutions.
The title was interesting to me when I really thought about the new network professional. And even this discussion, we always want to tend towards, the technical aspects and the technical qualities of people as we're thinking about who should be on our teams. And honestly, in a lot of ways, some of the best network people I've ever worked with one was an entomologist, one was a bug guy.
Yeah.
The liberal arts, that whole mindset, we don't have a lot of. The room probably is a little low on that part of that part as well. But that diversity of thought and opinion and just a different background. I mean, the thing I was an electrical engineer in undergrad and grad school, and so very technical background. The thing I use more than anything today is discounted cash flow. I mean, I didn't even invented by engineers, but having a little bit of business background was something that I didn't personally have, and I think the new network professional, something like that, is key. No matter what your job is, whether it's a technical job or writing code or building hardware or running a business, that one thing is something. I see one of my Zayo colleagues out there, Nikki, and she'd tell you, we probably talk about every decision we make is around driving the financial outcome for our business, and so having that as one of the key qualities is something I don't think we think about every day.
My peer, your ex-esteemed colleague, David Fulger, who built a big chunk of the level 3 CDN and built the Netflix CDN. Do you know what his degree is in?
I think he's in physics, right?
Astronomy.
Astronomy, yeah.
So I actually asked him an electrical engineering problem once, and he's like, how would I know the answer to that? It's like, that's right. Levi, what are you seeing, what are you doing to give people that breadth? Because obviously it's very easy. You're teaching them networky stuff.
Yep.
But what is the expected background? Do you expect them to also, where do you expect them to dip their toes into?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have kind of two different answers to this. So where our program is now from where it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we were all core networking, a lot of what this conference was 5 years ago. And now, we're getting really close to the software development side. And what I've noticed kind of immediately from being in where our undergrads are usually EE or telecom, and we're taking network engineers and kind of teaching them more software. Now that we're moving to the computer science department, we're taking software engineers and teaching them networking, and it's a completely different concept. They definitely think about programming and solving problems much differently. And so in my classes, like I said, one of them is network automation, right? So we start with, here's network engineering, here's how you automate it. And then kind of the next version of that is the software-defined networking. And regardless of what you think of that topic, the main outcome of that course is, now that you know how networks function, think differently about it, right? If you can start over, you can program how the network functions. Think about ARP. We don't have to broadcast it anymore. Think about DHCP. We can make that unicast, right? So take what you know, and now that you know how networks function, how are we going to redesign that? How are we going to think outside the box to do networks differently? And kind of, I think what everyone is saying here, a lot of our best engineers can just make things work by thinking outside the box. And that's a really hard trait to teach, right? Coming from, that's my job, right? So that's a hard skill to teach, but that's really what I think these students are thriving with.
I would agree with that.
So I want to jump in and sort of extend that analogy and talk a little bit about where we were. Maybe a quick poll in the room. How many people actually write code every day, every week?
So about a fifth of the room?
About a fifth of the room. I was hoping for a lot more, honestly. But it's not that it's just about the software. To me, software is just a tool, and a tool that you need to learn. We started this software conversation 4 or 5 years ago. Actually, just at lunch, we were talking to somebody. We at Facebook, we did a hackathon called FBAR, a Facebook auto remediation, about 4.5 years ago up in San Francisco, about helping people write code and how you automate failures and things like that. So to me, that conversation started years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And if you're not writing software, you get there, please do get there, because you want to solve problems with software. But the key here to me is now problems. What problems are you solving, and how you're solving them. To me, software is just a tool set that you need to learn, and it's not that you need to learn a particular language or a particular skill. It's about the way you think. What's your mindset in solving those problems, how you approach them, how you break them down. That's what's important. Yeah. And you do that. But so for me, the next professional is really about problem solving. take any problem that you pick. It could be provisioning, it could be a new routing protocol, to it be device management, to customer interface things like that. It doesn't matter. Can you take that problem and break it down and design it in a way that it's scalable and it's operationally efficient? If you want to make it operationally efficient and scalable, you're going to have to use software. So software is just a base underlying tool. So the conversation around software was years ago. To me, it's really now, can you focus on software engineering, solving problems that way? Yeah. I remember like when I was sort of younger and you would go interview with people, a lot of times people would ask these, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what do you want to be in 5 years? And to me, that's just such an arcane question at this point. It's like, it's not relevant. What's relevant is what experience are you gaining? What do you want to learn in the next 2 years? What do you want to solve in the next 2 years? Trust me, if you solve 5 different problems in the next 5 years, you will grow, period. Obviously, with the right mindset, with operational efficiency and scalability in mind, to solve real world problems. If you solve 5 big problems in 5 years, you would have grown, period. Yeah. So to me, that's where we really need to take the network engineering conversation.
It's a great piece of advice. Focusing your career on the things you want to accomplish will almost always end up in a better place than focusing on talent or money and all those things. Focusing on what you want to accomplish, either as an individual or a company, is really, I give this career advice a lot to people. So focusing on that is just the best way to live your career.
So I'm going to come back to that specifically thematically if we have time. Edward, one thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about here is what NANOG is up to. As an organization, my personal opinion, I've been fairly vocal about it, just a little bit, is that it needs to evolve. And one thing that struck me was looking at the keynotes for this conference. You've got 2 esteemed technologists who have been up on this stage many times, who are talking about awesome things that are highly relevant. How do we get something other than graybeards, unfortunately now like myself, which that is sad for me.
Shaved clean then.
Then I just look silly. No, how do we get someone other than the graybeards up here? How do we get people to be relevant enough that we want to hear from them in a keynote for a 1,200 person conference?
Well, I think NANOG as an organization is in an interesting space. We are filled with people who work in a corporate environment, and the core focus of a corporation is to turn a profit in some way or another. Governments are designed to benefit their people, but they develop nonprofits as something that exists in between. We can handle problems that are small enough that government can't deal with. Corporations have to focus on profits. Nonprofits focus on doing good. And I believe that NANOG being in an agnostic position within the industry can help to recruit the next generation of network professionals. I think that we can be at the forefront. I would love to see a panel of industry professionals who are kind of helping us direct and guide us as an organization to where we can reach out and help recruit the next generation of network engineers. We have planned this fall on the 17th, 18th, and 19th, we're going to be at Purdue, we're going to be at University of Illinois, we're going to be at Ball State, and we're delivering a mini NANOG experience tailored to that young audience. And so my goal is that we can solve 2 problems. An industry problem where there are not enough people to fill the positions out there. I believe that we can help expand our membership and the people that are involved in NANOG. And I think it happens by working out at the level of the young and trying to encourage them to perceive and see that there are career opportunities within the industry.
And how can NANOG be a more inclusive environment?
I think that, some of the things that I hope to have happen is develop a mentorship program. You can't really mentor unless you have guidance on how to do it properly. Some people do it innately. Some people, just as a result of who they are, can reach out and create that inclusive environment. A lot of people here have been going here for years, and they're friends, and they want to hang out with their group of people. But it's an afterthought of what about the other people that have come along? And I think to do those kind of changes, they must be done with deliberation. And that was the reason I was asking you, what were you doing within your organization? Because it doesn't happen accidentally. It happens because people intend to make that happen. Diversity will happen because it's an intention to create diversity. Inclusion will happen because it's an intention to make inclusion happen.
And in general on the stage, it's one thing we've talked a bit so far about diversity, which is how do we get different faces, different opinions, different backgrounds in the door? How do we keep them there? How do we grow them? What are the big efforts that Najim and Jack and Anna, what are you doing to keep, to retain, to grow, to build?
I can talk about this forever.
Go ahead, no, please.
Try to keep it. We went from me thinking an hour was way too long to now watching this clock and going,
Yeah, it's actually a really, really hard problem on especially the growth side. I see that in our environment as well, that junior engineers join and you see women in those ranks, and then as they become senior, and then women disappear. And we're like, wait, what happened? Where'd they go? So it's definitely something that we need to start looking at. One, you have to start looking at data to see where's actually where the trend is and where people fall out. There are very basic fundamental traits and biases that we have. I'll give you a very relevant actual example, a very simple example where we do peer level reviews. Where when you're doing your 6 monthly review, it's a peer review. So a team of 3, 2 men, 1 woman. When the woman writes the feedback for the other 2 men, it's all glowing. It's how awesome they were, how they collaborated, how they brought us in, and all that. When she writes her own review, it's I did this, but this person helped, and that person helped, and that person helped. And then when the men write, they write a sort of average balanced review and saying, hey, this person did blah, blah, blah. You take those 3 write-ups, have any manager look at them, the 2 men get promoted, the woman doesn't. Because just the way the biases are, the way we write things, the way women present themselves, it's far more muted. You can throw AI at it and AI will pick the 2 managers, 2 men to promote, because just the way the data is collected. So there's a lot of inherent biases in our own systems and thoughts and processes that over time that have developed that we need to be cognizant of. We need to, especially senior people, managers, tech leads that are actually driving meetings, that they need to drive those conversations and do a lot better. So I can talk about it forever, but I'll let others jump in. But there's just one example that we've seen relevant example in our space.
I think you have to be intentional, and it takes more than just the leadership, but that's an important thing. I mean, the leadership has to.
That's where it starts.
Start and drive that intent, but then it's up to kind of everybody, and it's everybody participating. It's talking about it. It's we do quarterly reviews, believe it or not, once a quarter. Wow. Every employee gets a review once a quarter. It's unbelievable. At first I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. It actually is the greatest thing I've ever been a part of. It has the most incredible immediate feedback is something you learn, both positive and negative. But that drives such a great kind of work ethic and intention around diversity, around inclusion. It really is, and we're as tough an organization as anybody, but that quarterly feedback is such a great thing, and I think the reason why our numbers for inclusion and diversity and everything are a little bit better than the rest of our industry right now is because of that. It's because of that intent.
Anna?
So you're gonna have to bear with me for a second here, because this is the first, there's a couple things I want to put together, and this is the first time I've ever tried to verbalize it completely. So first off, very specifically to what we do to keep people engaged at Packet Fabric is, I talked about before, we have sort of this homogeneous group SREs, NREs, software engineers, network engineers, that everyone can sort of shift around, right? Because I think one of the key things, especially for engineering minds to keep engaged, is learning new things. So if you build that inherently into job positions, right? We've always had these really weird, rigid lines, software engineering, network engineering, like SRE. In reality, all the skills are pretty much the same. And why I'm so happy to hear about Levi is like the courses that are happening right now at CU Boulder. So I think keeping those really fluid lines and letting people work on different projects definitely helps to keep people engaged. And then one of the other things, so there's this Google project, I'm gonna get the name wrong because I've been trying to think of it. It's like Project Archimedes, but it's all about how teams work the best together. And it's on Rework. You guys should all read it. It's actually required reading for all of our new hires. And it's all about how the teams that have the best collaboration are the most effective, right? And so as we move farther up the stack with network, right? Okay, so we've got automated upgrades now, right? You schedule an upgrade for 2 in the morning, no one's got to be around. If it fails, it does its thing. If a line card fails, okay, great. The system goes out, ships a new one, contacts the warehouse to get it installed, swapped out. Okay, great, right? We're automating away the bottom, the low-hanging fruit. So the next level up is the actual correlation of network events. What happens when we have a lot of failures? Why did that happen? Like, if we could have the system figure that out, that would be great. And we're not going to get to that point unless we have super high collaboration across all those sort of resources. And one of the things that I've noticed in the past is that network has been especially segregated. It's always like, oh, the network's over there, it's over there. And it kind of gave rise to this culture of the brilliant jerk a little bit. The guys who are, and I shouldn't say guys, I'm sorry, the people who are, super knowledgeable, but also just don't work well in team environments, right? And
it's like the classic technical introvert, right?
It is. And I was trying to think up here, actually listen to everybody talk. It's a little bit chicken and egg, right? It's like, how did that happen, right? Was it the fact that we segregated the network off that gave rise to that, or were those people drawn to it? And it's a very weird thing. But one thing I'm pretty sure of, though, is that in order to reach this next level of automation and self-driving networks and everywhere that we want to get, those barriers have to be severely broken down, and that mindset of segregation, and it needs to go away.
I think there's been a flip. I look back to when I was first looking for a job, and the thing you were asked when you were in a job interview was, are you a self-starter, and can you work independently? That was a key thing in the 80s. So you had this bias in the workforce of you almost encouraged people to be introverted, to work on their own. And that's flipped.
Yep.
It's completely opposite. We care more than anything about, can you work in a team?
Yep.
Can you thrive in a team? Can you work well with others? All the obvious things. But that was not the case 25 years ago.
But you also need to make space, right? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
people people don't always realize about me, I'm like a super introvert. I'm fine, I don't care being up in front of this group, this doesn't bother me at all. But you put me one-on-one with someone who I don't know at dinner, and it's like mortifying. And so, but we're learning to embrace those qualities in people and figure out how to use them, right? How they can be beneficial to the business, because you can't change that. As much as you want to say you can change that, you can't. And that kind of leads in to the next question that I'm going to try to move us pretty quickly through so that we can just take some audience questions. There's been a tension for a long time between people who come in, are excellent technologists for years, and then go, well, what's my career path? And some people go, well, I should go into management. And they do that because they want the title or they want the money, which was your point much earlier, and not necessarily because they love the idea of managing people. Or they want to run things, right? They just want to be the one who gets to make decisions about the technology, and people come along with that. So when you have those types of discussions with people where someone comes to you and says, I want to be a leader, how do you handle that? Do you go, do you put that through a screen, through a filter, and go, well, maybe not, but here's ways you could be more advanced technologically and grow your career here? Or do you try to cultivate them as a leader? Or option C?
Happy to jump into that one. There are two ways to think. One, you specifically asked, what's your motivation? But I want to cover the other aspect as well, to actually create a culture and environment that people don't feel like they need to be in management to have influence and have a say, right? So what like we have done, we have 3 tracks. You have an individual contributor track, engineers that make decisions. You have what we call tech leads. Let me cover the managers first. Manager is easy. You're building an org. You're building orgs of various sizes, solving different problems. But we created a third one called tech lead managers, where you're a deeply technical person. You want to solve large-scale problems. Often, large-scale problems require a team of 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 people. What's your growth? How are you going to become a director level if you are only going to manage 6 people? What does that look like? So what we've done is we've created the tech lead manager track, which allows people to be an IC or a manager, depending on what problem they're solving, and manage a small team and grow in that. And we have director, even VP level tech lead managers. We have director and VP level IC people. So one, you have to create that system that people don't feel that they have to be in one track or another, because each track has a ceiling or whatever glass ceiling that they feel like they have. So we do have those 3 tracks, and you can find VP level people in all 3. Then the question becomes, do you build a culture which actually allows people to make decisions? And you can ask people where majority of the managers that you will find at Facebook, they'll say, I support such and such team. They'll never say, I lead this team. Because the leadership comes from the technology folks that are actually driving these decisions. You're supporting and removing roadblocks. You're guiding at some places.
Absolutely.
So building that culture actually makes that happen. Then you start seeing the obvious, like, yeah, I never want to be a manager because it sucks to be a manager. I want to stay a tech lead. And there are a couple of tech leads here that I see from our space as well that actually have gone through that path. So you have to actually show and do before you can change minds. The trouble we do have is when people come from the outside, they're like, no, I want to be a director because I want to have influence. And then you have to walk them off that ledge to say, you're really not going to get to make decisions if you want to come in at that.
Jack?
I've been a champion of this structure since, beginning of level 3. I mean, I absolutely believe you have to create structure that supports, the ability to have huge influence and not be a leader. And I go back to those days. Half the people work in your group or work in your group now, but those were we had, I think, 14 architects back then, and those 14 people decided everything for the company, everything. And you just have to build that kind of structure. It doesn't matter how many people you have in your group or whatever, but there are key positions that make key decisions for your company. Whatever you're doing, and it doesn't matter about management structure and all those.
How do you guys develop the soft skills that you need to manage people? Because what it takes to be great in technology is also often the antithesis of what it takes to manage people. It's like in sports, the guy who is an All-American, the best player ever, they make horrible coaches.
Well, what did Laurence Olivier say when asked, how did he become such a great actor? He said 1,000 plays. I'd say repetition, feedback. Some people are natural leaders, but the only way to become, in my opinion, become a great leader is to do it, get lots and lots of feedback. You'll hear lots of things that you don't like, probably. It hurts to hear the things that you're not good at, but if you can make it through that, and your job as a leader of managers is to provide that feedback, I really think that many people, even though it's not natural.
Let me go to Anna with this, and then I want to go out to the audience. That's okay now.
So Edward, to yours, to follow up on that question real quick, we use a lot of direct feedback. So we follow Netflix in the 360 style reviews because I think that they're very brilliant. So a lot of feedback. And then also as far as like people who want to grow into leadership roles and don't have those skills, repetition. I mean, Jack, you were right on. It's like repetition. If somebody wants to get into a new position and they are not very good at, say, confronting a colleague on, an issue of like quality of work, like the code they're producing isn't up to it, guess what? I will make that person do that all the time. continually until they master being able to confront someone saying, hey, this is what is wrong with your code. I gave you, I commented on your PR. I gave you a whole write-up on it. And I'll make them do that until they're comfortable with it. And I think there was one more.
I want 20 seconds on this.
Okay, yeah, 20
I
seconds.
feel passionate about this. Where to me it starts with intent, which was implied in your question.
Yes.
If you come in as into a manager position with the wrong intent that, I'm going to make technical decisions, you will never learn.
Yep.
You will fail most of the time. So it doesn't matter how much you teach them. Intent is what's important, because a manager's job is so much EQ, so much supporting,
Define
helping,
EQ.
road belling.
Define EQ.
Define EQ. Essentially, being able to read people, because the thing is, it's easy to talk to machines because they usually tend to behave the way they describe to behave. Human beings don't. You can tell the same thing to 10 human beings and you get 10 different reactions. How do you read that? How do you accommodate that? How do you inspire the 10, right? Those are the EQ things. So if you come in for the wrong reason, I'm sorry, you can't learn. It's going to be hard.
I'm going to throw it out to the audience.
Wait, I just
but
have
you can add, if you have a question for the panel, please come up to a microphone and Anna will finish her answer and then we'll go to the audience.
I just wanted to say that part of our ethos statement is, I think, a really important one, is not too big for the small things, not too small for the big things. And what that essentially means is you are never in a position that is too great to pick up paper off the floor, and you are never in a position so small that you can't make an important decision yourself.
Absolutely. Right in the middle here.
Hey there, this thing on? Okay. I'm Spencer Martin. So I think it came up a few times, or at least it was talked around with questions or comments like entomologist was the best network engineer I ever knew, or the pipeline reduces as you go forward. Is there a current assumption that the next network professional has a higher level degree, and should that be the assumption?
I don't have a degree, and I try to go out of my way to make sure that no one in my organization cares whether or not someone has a degree. Sorry, Levi.
With Levi especially.
I agree. I mean, I think there probably is room for anybody that's talented, whether it comes with a degree or not. Can you cast a wide enough net at times? Probably not. So I think being able to, I know people probably in the room know Scott Bradner. Scott doesn't have a degree. Probably one of the most impactful people in the internet. I don't think that's necessarily a qualification. It's not a bad thing to have. Now, don't get me wrong.
Yeah. So to me, it's about learning how to learn.
Yeah.
And that's what college teaches you. They're not necessarily teaching you a skill, it's teaching you how to learn. Everybody learns differently. Go figure out how you learn. If it's a degree, go get that. If not, go do something else.
Absolutely.
Perfectly fine.
In the center there you go.
Hi guys, I'm Sabyasachi Gupta. I am currently a graduate student in Texas A&M University in my final semester. So I like to ask, so when I came in Texas A&M and started working, wanted to be a network professionals when I graduate. So one question keep nagging at me was, how do you define the next network professional? Because nowadays the lines are getting blurry. You have engineers who are writing software codes, they are software engineers, there are system engineers coming in. And so basically my question to you is, how do you define the next network professional? What you're looking for in skill sets, tools this next network professionals would have? Thank you.
So the answer there is definitely broader skill set, right? Not just necessarily network engineering, knowing your protocols, but also, not necessarily that you have to be a full-blown software engineer or, a system admin genius, but, you should be familiar with what Git is, what the open source tools are around using stuff, and having more breadth, even outside of network engineering, right? I mean, maybe know something about psychology, see what that brings to the table. In general, have a Swiss Army knife of skills to choose from, and not all of them necessarily need to be deep or as deep as your network engineering, but having more diversity in your skill set will bring a lot to the table.
I'd like to, jobs@zayo.com.
All right, no plug. You and then the mic behind. So in the front, sorry. It's hard to see the lights.
Steve Powell from CenturyLink. I'm interested in your opinion of whether telecommuting versus not telecommuting do you feel which one is more advantageous, or does it not matter?
Who on this stage has a greater than 30% of your staff is not at HQ?
Well, not AHQ, but
Well, I mean, not at a headquarters.
I feel super passionate about this, and it depends in the stage of company. So Zayo, we bought 48 companies. And what happened when we bought 48 companies? We had people all over the planet. And it was hard to run the company. It was. And I know it's not the most popular thing, but we attempted to move people to our kind of core work areas, and our productivity has improved because of it. Not super popular, but the notion of telecommuting is more a bit, to me, about flexibility. Mm-hmm. I want everyone to have flexibility, but I do believe that teams can work better when they see each other. So it's been a tough balance for us right now. We were so distributed, it was not productive.
Right.
And we had to become more centralized, if you will. But you know what's happened? Our employees, we survey every quarter. We do everything every quarter. Our employee sat has gone through the roof. Our attrition has gone down. Even though it was painful to get there, the numbers speak for themselves.
I'm going to let Anna answer with the opposite opinion here,
Yeah.
Yes.
and then we'll go to the last question.
Yes, absolutely. I even think the term telecommuting, is really outdated. It's remote. It's remote work, or it's just how you work, right? And you really have to be set up as an organization to make people successful, being remote. That's all there is to it. And like the reason for high attrition rates is because you're just not getting those people included, right? And I've seen this a lot in companies across the board here. But as long as you have the tools in place to make people feel included, I think you can have even a possibly stronger group of people remotely than you can in an office, because you have to get really good at communication, right? And you have to get really good at communication with a bunch of people, because there's no stopping in the hallway to have a one-off conversation to get something done. Like, you have to become very effective at communicating your ideas. And I think it makes every single person on a remote team much stronger.
Thank you. Last question, I believe it's Michael Costello.
Michael Costello with Netflix. Both Edward and Najim said in the introduction that they learned a lot from failures. I think there was a lot more latitude for that in the 80s and 90s. So what tolerance do we have for failure and learning from it today?
I think one of our most famous culture posters says, "Move fast, break things." The one that I'm still trying to parse 9 years later to figure out how that works, or how to implement it. It's called fail harder. So failure is sort of inherent in our culture. But I want to be clear, it's not about failure. That was the first question I asked when I joined the team, was like, okay, so move fast, break things. So can we just break the network? Is that okay? Obviously, that's not okay. You can't live without the network anymore. So the conversation is about risk and risk assessment, and how do you assess risk that you're taking? And can we teach every engineer how to take the appropriate risk? And if you take the risk and it still fails, so be it, deal with it. What actually ends up happening is that you start building systems that have better sustainability, better resiliency to it. So when the failure does happen, you have to make sure that your follow-ups, the postmortems, or we call them sub-reviews, are focused on solving the problem and making it more resilient for next time, and that it's not a witch hunt. That is the key problem that I see in a lot of organizations, that postmortems have become about who caused the problem, who made the fat finger mistake. One of my mentors used to say, yeah, sure, somebody made a config change and made a fat finger. This is going to happen again. How are you going to protect yourself?
Another option is, if you come get a master's degree, you can break things every day.
And with that, thank you to the panel.
Thank you.